Hello and welcome to the Tangle of the Day. My name is Amy Lilien-Harper and I am a certified Zentangle instructor as well as one of the children's librarians at the Wilton Library, and I'm here to teach you a tangle today. Before we get started, I'm just going to do a really quick overview of our supplies. So the standard thing we use is this. It's called a tile. It's made out of a heavy paper and it's about 3.5 by 3.5. I'm going to be working on this little tile. You can see it's about 1/4 the size of a standard size tile. It's called a bijou tile, and I'm using it because I can complete an entire tangle in a short period of time for these videos. I also have some pens. I will be using this pen. It's a Micron 01. You can see it has an extremely fine point, which helps you have really nice control. Another pen a lot of people like to use is this one. This is a Micron PN. You can see this one has a hard point, so it's nice for people who like to have a little bit of more sturdy pen, but any good ink pen with a fine point will work for what you're doing. And I also have this lovely little pencil. This is an official Zentangle pencil, and you can see it's quite small, so I can tuck it right into my hand, but any soft lead pencil will do just fine. And then I have this. It's called a tortillon. It's a shading tool, and you can use one of these. If you don't have one, a Q-tip or a rolled up piece of paper, your fingers will work just fine. Now, before I start my Zentangle practice, we always begin with a series of steps, and the first step is gratitude and appreciation. I normally have my students take a minute to take a few deep breaths, get themselves into a comfortable position, and get themselves ready to begin. I will not do that right now. However, if you'd like to pause your video and do so, you may feel free to do so. Okay, so now we're going to get started. The next step in the Zentangle process is to create your 4 corner dots. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to make mine fairly close to the corners. Ordinarily, on a regular size tile, I would give myself maybe a little more space for my border. But because I'm working on this little tiny tile, I'm going to make them kind of close to the edge. And then I am going to create a border, which is our next step. I'm just connecting my lines to create a border. It doesn't matter if your border is perfectly straight. It's just a way to get rid of the empty space and give us a little bit of structure. And all of our pencil work that we do before we begin with our ink is done very lightly because it's really a guide. It's not intended to constrain us in any way. And if you go over top of it, it's no problem. So our next step after this would normally be a string. And a string is a way we divide up our space. And it can be anything. It can be a letter, it could be a number, it could be a big squiggle, it could just be a random X, whatever you want it to be. But today we're not going to do one because I'm working on such a little tile and I'm only doing one tangle. We're doing what we call a monotangle. So the tangle we're going to do is called Gneiss. It's got an odd spelling, so I'll show you that at the end. And it starts with a very large orb. We don't call them circles because human beings are not very good at making perfect circles, but we can make orbs. So I'm going to make quite a large orb since I'm only doing the one tangle. And this is such a one-piece tangle that it's going to be easiest for me to show you just one of them. So there you go. I made an orb. You can see it's fairly round. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And now I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to choose a spot, and I am not going to do this right in the middle. I'm purposefully not doing this right in the middle because you get a much better effect if it's a little off center. So I'm going to put a dot right there, okay? And now I'm going to draw a series of rays, and I'm going to create sort of a pie shape. So I'm going to draw a series of rays, and I am going to try to make my pie pieces roughly the same size, but if they're not exact, it doesn't matter. Obviously, they're going to be they're not going to be exactly the same size because the dot is off center, but I want to make our pieces sort of similar size. That one's a little big, but that's fine. Okay, so I now have my rays, and it doesn't matter how many you make. You just want to give yourself a little space to work inside them. Okay, so we've completed our rays. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to just draw some lines to create kind of a little triangle at the base of each of our pie pieces. And you can see I actually curve mine a little bit because it makes it a little easier to get that shape on the ones that are a little wider. On this one, I did it a little straighter. It doesn't matter. You can do it either way. Whatever way works for you is fine. I find with the wider ones, a little bit of a curve helps to get that point because you do want a little bit of a point there. And just going to do these last two. This is not a very time required kind of tangle, but it's really fun. And there are multiple ways to do it, but I'm going to show you the style I do it. So now you have this pretty kind of star shape inside your circle. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a series of lines, and they're going to go down here, but it's not going to be a full line. It's going to be a dotted line. So I'm going to start at my point that I created to make sure that I keep it starting there, because I think it's easier to start here and end in the center than start in the center and end here, but you can do it any way you want. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to make a line, and then I'm just going to kind of pick up my pen, draw another little dash, and come into the center. So we're going to create that sort of dash line, sort of like a highlight. So I'm going to do that again, and I try to put my little dash roughly in the middle of that line, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Perfection is not a requirement or even an expectation in Zentangle. And I'm just doing that all the way around. I'm doing that on each of my little pie pieces. And there we go. So now we have this star shape with these little dashes. And now we're going to draw a series of lines to create sort of a little extra motion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pen and I'm just going to aura this like pie piece. And I'm going to continue to aura it. And the goal is to make these auras roughly the same size, same distance, but if they don't come out perfect, don't worry about it. And I'm going to do that all the way around. And I'm going to recommend that the way you do it is by starting by auraing your outer curve and working your way in. And the reason I'm going to do that is because it is much easier to get consistent, nice looking auras if you start on the outside. If you start in here, when you get to this outside, you're unlikely to have it come out looking sort of the same shape because it may not just naturally fall that way. So, but if you start on the outside, it's much easier. You can see on my first one, it did kind of come out a little offset, but on the other ones, it's coming out more even. So if you like consistency, I definitely recommend that you work from the outside in rather than the inside out. But if you really like to work from the inside out, you may go ahead and do that. And it doesn't matter if you've got the same number of lines. You can see I have fewer here because I just had less space because it was such a flat space. And take your time with this. Don't worry about going as fast as I am. I'm going fairly quickly just because this is a video. If I was doing it on my own, I might well be going a little more slowly. And there you go. And you probably noticed that as I'm working, I've been rotating my tile. You always want to hold your tile in whatever's the most comfortable position for your hand. It's one of the reasons we work on such a small tile. All right, well, that's it. That is the tangle. And you can see that you've got sort of some three-dimensionality here with these angles here and the circles and the dash lines. It gives you some 3D effect. But now we're going to shade it, and that is where the real magic is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to choose one of these full lines, not the dashed ones. And I'm going to choose one side. So I'm going to go on the left side of my line. So I'm going to draw, just put a little bit, and you'll notice I'm holding my pencil at an angle, not straight up and down, because I'm using the side of my pencil, not the point. but I am putting just a very little bit of graphite down along that line. And now I'm going to rotate my tile, and again, I'm going to go onto the left side, not the right. It doesn't matter which one you choose. If you want to do the right side, that's fine. Just make sure you're consistent all the way around. So the key is to choose one side and do that side all the way around. So I'm just going to put a little bit of graphite down along each of these lines. Okay. All right. And this was my first one. So I'm all the way around. And now I'm going to take my tortillon and I'm just going to use, and again, I'm using the side of, you really need to use the side of this. If you use it up and down, you'll squish the point in no time flat. So I'm going to just use and I'm just drawing my graphite out, and you'll see I'm actually filling this whole triangle, but I'm not. It gets lighter as I get closer to the dashed line, and that's the effect we want. So you get sort of a darker right along the edge there, and then it kind of lightens up, but there's definitely still a shadow as you get closer. This one was kind of a small piece, so you get a little less of that gradient effect. That's okay. And there's multiple ways to shade anything, but this is how I like to shade this. And this tangle actually has multiple ways to do it, but I think this one gives you the best effect. And then I'm going to take my pencil again, and I'm just going to put a little bit of lead down. And this time I'm doing both. I'm putting a little bit of lead down right along the lines, these two little lines at the base, just like that. And I'm going to go all the way around and put a little bit of lead or graphite on the bottom of each of these. And I'm back to my beginning. And now I'm going to take my tortillon again. And this time I'm not going to draw it too far out. I'm just going to get a little bit, I'm just going to sort of soften it up right along those edges. You can make little circles with your tortillon. You can go kind of just a little bit of back and forth. This is not, there's just a little bit of space here, so you don't need to do a whole lot. And I tend to be a little heavy-handed with my shading. Plus, this tortillon has been well used, so it's got a lot of lead on it. And then last but not least, I'm going to take or you could do this first, but I'm doing it last. You can take I'm going to take my pencil, and I'm just going to put a little bit of graphite all along the outside of this cute little Gneiss. All along, there we go. And then I'm just going to soften that up as well. And what you're going to see as I complete this is that the shading that we've done causes the whole thing to look sort of three-dimensional. It makes it look a little bit like it's, first of all, rising up off the page a little bit, and then as if this whole piece inside is raised up from here, and then each of these is kind of a fold, so it sort of looks like it lifts up and comes to a point in the middle. And that is nice. And now at this point, we always sign our work, and I always suggest that you hold it out, appreciate it from a distance, decide what direction it goes. I happen to like mine this way, so I'm just going to put my chop, which is just your initials. You just find a spot to put it. It can be right in the middle or on the side. I'm putting mine on the side here. Then I'm going to flip my bijou over, and I am going to sign it. I always encourage everybody to sign and date all your work so you know when it happened and who did it. And today is the 29th, so I'll put that on there. And this tangle is called Gneiss, and it is spelled Gneiss. So that is Gneiss. And our final step in the Zentangle process is to just turn them over, hold it out, take a look at it, and appreciate it. So I encourage you to do that. I hope you enjoyed this, and you will come back and see me again soon. And that is nice. Have a great day.